My favorite part of the meeting. Well, good afternoon. Today is June 7th, 2021. You're part of the Rowan County Commission first. Well, it's our, however we do it, first and third Monday, right? This is the first Monday of the month. So welcome. When we see a big group of folks here, we think, oh, shoot, what did we do? But we know what you're here for, and it's a good thing. We're glad that you're here. We hope that by midnight tonight, when this meeting is over, and by the way, you have to stay for the whole thing. If right? All right, okay. That's right. Well, thank you for being here. We mean that sincerely. A couple things that we do always as we get started, just like elected boards all across this great country, is we have a couple of traditions. One is that we're going to have a prayer from our chaplain. This is called a solemnizing prayer. This is not for you. This is for the commissioners. What we do, especially today, there's a lot of decisions to be made. And between all of us, we recognize that we're not always the wisest folks, so we pray for wisdom and have folks pray for wisdom for us as we make decisions that are in the best interest of everyone in Rowan County. And then we're also going to have a Pledge of Allegiance. So Chaplain Taylor, if you'll come forward and get us started. Commissioners, if you'll join me, we'll begin.
Let's pray. Lord, we thank you for the privilege to be here today, to come to you on behalf of the county commissioners, Lord. Thank you all for the work that they do. Thank you for the preparation they've made, especially for this meeting today. We ask for wisdom for them on behalf of them, dear Lord, that they'll make the right decision, do the right thing, dear Lord. Thank you for Rowan County, dear Lord. We pray you continue to bless the commissioners as they work in this county. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Chaplain Taylor, as always, for being here, and thank you for sharing your good news with me earlier. Appreciate it. All right, to my knowledge, we have one item to add to our consent agenda that came from Aaron on June 2nd, which was last Wednesday, regarding the investing in our children agenda. So do we have a motion to add that to the agenda?
So moved.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any other additions or deletions to the agenda? All right, if not, then do we have a motion to approve the amended agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And then the minutes of May 17th, 26th, and 28th have been provided for us. Any corrections to the minutes? If none, then do we have a motion and a second to approve?
So moved.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
So I kind of got ahead of myself, but that's okay. We approved the consent agenda, didn't we?
Yes,
Yes.
All right, all right. We want to take a second here to do a special recognition. And if the wizard behind the door, April,
In the door
is
automatically.
she in there? April, would you come out here? I know you love this, especially with a big crowd. April, if you'll come out here. Commissioners, could we go out and join her?
Sure.
That way. This is one of your favorite things, isn't it? So a few years ago, when many of us came on the board, we began to ask the question about is Rowan County telling its story, and are we telling it in a good, positive way? And we began a branding effort, but from that, a whole lot of work has come about getting Rowan County ready so that we can tell our story to not only Rowan County folks, but also folks around the region, around the world. And one of the MVP players for that was given some recognition, was it last week? Or was it the week before? Week before last, the Tourism Authority. The chamber had their, what they call power partnership meeting a couple of weeks ago on Thursday morning early, it's 7 o'clock. And the Tourism Authority was one of the sponsors for that, and they made special recognition. April, they called it, the branding champion. They named for the first time a branding champion in Rowan County. They presented that branding champion award to our friend April. And so we wanted to do a little thing for April ourselves, not to be outdone by the tourism community. But April has put in so much time here in Rowan County, done so many good things that you all, the only way you'll see that is that she runs the meetings behind the door. She's the technician that no one ever sees, but when the branding and new websites and all of these things began to happen, it was really her expertise and her talent that began to show through in the way Rowan County is trying to present itself to the world. And so we wanted to tell you a little bit about April. She started with Rowan County in May of 2012 at the library, and then expanded her roles to include the public library newsletter, and then worked on a social media presence for them. She was a key member in 2016 during the planning stages of the county website redesign while she was at the library. She came over to information technology right before the project took off as the webmaster, and shortly thereafter in 2017, she was reclassified as the creative services manager. The role expanded well beyond the county website and the social media, policy creation, ADA compliance for online services, and eventually into work with the rebranding process of Chandler Things, a group out of Kentucky. She has added AD support for the Board of Commissioner meetings, annual events, become a Zoom expert host overnight with the COVID-19 pandemic, and she was a key player in the open data portal and still continues to assist with press releases. And so we wanted to do our own recognition and present to our friend April Everett, and this is presented to April for her extraordinary efforts and time dedicated in transforming Rowan County's brand. Rowan County Board of Commissioners, June 7th, 2021, and we're just not only proud of you, but we're really, really thankful for who you are, but not only that, what you do, and we're grateful for that. So we don't get for a round. So no, April, a good metaphor is being behind that door. You guys would like the attention. So I know this is uncomfortable, but we continue to appreciate it. Commissioners, anything you'd like to ask? Yeah. So, anything you want to say?
I really appreciate it. Commissioner Hood asked me to take my mask off and scream shy, so just I just want to thank you for the vote of my heart. I really appreciate it so much. Thank you.
And a big thanks to Carolyn for always organizing these things for us. The guys on this board have no creativity whatsoever, so we're thankful for what Carolyn does to make up for our deficits. All right, do we have anyone for public comment? We do. Okay. All right. Ronnie Reams, is it Reams? Ronnie Reams?
I don't think he's going to stay.
Okay.
He may well.
Okay. All right, then Cindy Fink.
Actually, Chairman, Ed, it's with regard to the proposed budget. Is that okay? Or I didn't know that really the difference between.
Yeah, there'll be a public hearing for
I'll
budget.
wait for that.
Okay, all right, excellent. All right, then that's all we have. All right, so we'll move on to item number 4, public hearing to consider Z03-21 and SNIA 04-21 for East Coast developers. Hey, good to see you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. So while the application says East Coast Developers, I think the board may recognize this business more as Carolina Site Works. That's the business name, and also Mr. Darrell Shell is the owner, so you'll see his name in the application and the material posted in the report. But this would be a rezoning request for his property or the company's property at 375 Wade Drive in China Grove, just adjacent to their main facility. There we go. So if you look at the vicinity map here, you'll see the property outlined in blue. This is Wade Drive, a private road, extends off of 152 down Brookwood and Beaver Loop, but it's a 1 acre lot currently zoned RA. You see the red dot here beside it. That represents their main facility at 300 Wade Drive. If you look at 2018 photo, a little difficult to see at this scale, but there at that time was a double wide home on the property. The business bought that tract, and a year later started to move some of the operations to the site a little in advance of being rezoned. On February 2nd of 21, this is a pictometry image here, and you see some arrangement of structures and open storage of their site needs. This is the main facility at 300. Wade Drive extends just off the screen here back to Brookwood and Beaver Loop. A little bit closer in, you see currently there's arrangement of vehicles parked there, and there's a series of stockpiles that have some stone, sand, dirt, whatever needs for that construction company. They pave roads and do all sorts of things in land development. A couple prefab structures on the site, but in the site plan it has a little bit more of the details of the site layout. There will be, and it's kind of difficult to see on that scale, but I'll reference back. If you keep this in mind, this red outlines the property, and a little bit of woods here on the right-hand side. But in that site, they would have a required 20-foot buffer with some evergreens adjacent to. As a side note, this site here, to take a step back, if the board remembers, Saritha Springs had a event center request several months ago. This is her property here. That kind of sparked when staff went out. We noticed a few things, one of which was this site and also this property here. There's a home occupation that was not permitted, and we're working with the owner to get that corrected at the time. But nonetheless, since
What is that?
it is, they do home construction, so remodel and new home construction, but the builder lives here, and their site got a little, started moving forward before getting all their approvals. So we're working with them as well, but this is the only required buffer because the operation is within 200 feet. The Springs residence, I believe, is over 200 feet, but we encourage the applicant to provide that buffer there as well. And then right here, I believe there may be more of 200 feet, but a lot of the woods is on the adjacent property. Some of these trees, I think, have been removed. But nonetheless, this would be 20, 20, and for the math, 27, because this will also in your packet, noticed it requires an intensity allocation for the watershed. So that green space would be the representative of their 30%. So they want to maximize with that 70. So again, a little bit difficult to see on this site plan, but if you go back to the site, I think this would be the operational area. These buildings would need to be slid over a little bit to comply with that 20 feet and anything here as well. Of course, with pictometry, you have some exaggeration in the photo, so it may be a little bit further than it appears. So the rezoning request would be to CBI-CD that matched the adjacent CBI-CD that was approved in 2006. In the staff report, if you read the background, you'll notice that that adjacent operation, it had a commercial structure on it. Carolina Site Works had an offer to purchase contingent on the rezoning passing in 2006. It did, so it's CBI-CD. This would add on to that district. There's not a lot of pictures because it is somewhat secluded except for maybe the one address or the Ruiz, property here. This is at the end of Wade Drive, looking down a private driveway to an adjacent Ruiz residence with the home occupation we're working with at 365. But beyond this location here is the site we were looking at overhead. It's difficult to match up here because you couldn't get good pictures and access there. On the other side of these trees are the access to the main site at 300. So this is a little bit of a cul-de-sac. And one of the conditions in 2006 for their rezoning, Carolina Site Works had actually took the gravel road and paved it 18 to 20 feet. It's in really good condition. A little bit of cracking at the entrance at Beaver Loop Brookwood, but by and large in good shape. With our rezoning request, we take a look at the land use plan. There's a few things that the board may want to look at. It is technically within the corridor for 152 and near the 85 corridor, but it's right here in that crosshair area. And due to the location, the overlay language may not be as applicable, but you have some buffering standards that might be considered, which applicant is providing. Other note is expansion that minimize conflict with adjacent property through these techniques can be encouraged too. So that's probably the most direct recommendation from the plan. As typical, we put a sign up on the property. Notices go to adjoining landowners, which there were not many. And the planning board did recommend unanimous approval, 9-0. On page 5, you have the statement of consistency. And on that same page, the reasonableness as well. So this would be for the rezoning and the intensity allocation, which in the site or the staff report on page 2, I list all the statistics. There's been very little removed from Dutch Buffalo Creek, 21 acres out of 1,013. So we're way under our 10% option there. And one last thing, on the built upon area, it is not paved. It will be crushed asphalt and ABC stone. Any questions of the board?
Did you say that they're going to have to move buildings? Were they encroaching on property line?
They, I believe the 2 of them are, and they will be slid over, but they're prefab structures. And
all right, any other questions for Shane?
Shane, I actually got a lesson in SNIA, so now I understand that. But my question is there any slope to this property since they're going to be storing materials? So there's any issue of runoff if we get these hard rains?
Interestingly enough, this is the dividing line of watershed 4 and 2. I believe it does drain generally to the south. So, but being that it's exactly 1 acre, erosion plan is not triggered, or phase 2 stormwater, if it was within that area, is not triggered if you develop under an acre.
All right, any other questions for Shane? All right, if not, is Mr. Shell here? Is there anything he'd like to add to it? Hey, welcome.
I just appreciate the board's time and consideration for looking at our business and giving us the opportunity to expand. We've been well-served in this location since we moved in, and are glad to be there.
Any questions for Mr. Shell? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, then we'll open the floor for a public hearing. Something we need to do to let the public weigh in. If anyone has anything to add to this, questions or application, or questions about the application. All right, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. And commissioners, we have a statement of consistency and reasonableness. I've got it available. All right, so I'll offer this up in the form of a motion. Z03-21 is consistent with the Eastern Land Use Plan. It is a less intensive land use. It is the expansion of an existing business. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
As a statement of reasonableness, I'll offer this up as a motion. The proposed use is compatible with the Eastern Land Use Plan. There is no benefit to the owner at the expense to neighboring properties. Surrounding uses are similar. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, so then do we have a motion to approve 03-31 and SNIA 04-21?
So moved. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Thank you, Shane. You've got another one. Hearing to consider Z04-20, an amendment for Morgan Well.
Back in November of last year, the board approved this rezoning request, and at that time it was, I think from the septic standpoint, it took a little bit of time to get everything finalized, and what they found was some additional area behind the structure that can be used because that's where the septic system was designed to go originally, and it moved 300 and 400 feet away behind the facility. So this is a request to amend the previous district because it's too much of a change for staff to approve, so the board needs to see the site. On the screen is the front view of the building, so we will have some pictures to kind of go through, but again, the change is only to really amend that site plan. So as you recall before, we're on the corner of Boston and Old Beatty Ford Road. It has an address now of 1840, and you see the whole site's rezoned. One of the main changes from before is the board approved land across the road a couple months ago for mini storage, CBI/CD as well. So there's the site in the 18 photo. This is the overall site plan, which we're going to focus on the front half. The request here is only to address this new gravel area. It's open storage. If you recall, it's a water well drilling contractor's business. This represents a little under ½ acre of open storage. It's really a lot. In terms of the site, I think from talking with the owner, it's going to really make the operation work. This was really too tight, but they did what they had to with the original design. The septic was going to be here, not providing that opportunity. So now that it's way off here to the right of the screen, this is opened up. You'll see some shrubs here proposed 10 feet on center around the site. So one of the things that was discussed by board members last time was trying to reduce a little bit of the visibility. There's crepe myrtles proposed here. So the previous plan stopped right here. It did not include these dwarf Beaufort hollies, which that's a quick little image. As a side note, in the staff report, I provided growing specs from NC State on these shrubs, and I found some other sources that said it would be a little bit slower. I don't know which one you go with, but it may only be 6 feet at maturity, 6 tall and wide. But for what it's worth, the information in the staff report was from state, and it said it could get up to 10 feet, and it's fast, and it may very well be slow. Don't know if that really matters to the board, but, and most likely the planting will be delayed. Normally, when the board approves the site, it's required before operation, but in this case, it's too hot to plant, so it would be delayed. So that's really the only change, this area, these screening provided, and then 2 additional crepe myrtles to continue the previous layout.
Who follows up on the planning? You or permitting and inspections?
We do, yes, sir. Front of the building here in the top left, it's a really nice site. I think they've done a great job and follow the plan to the T. And this is to the right side of that picture is the existing storage area that's allowed before the proposal here. And we'll get to the back. So looking to the left, there's those crepe myrtles. The dwarf Burford holly will be planted along here. At the back of the building, this would be the opened area for additional gravel. They're still under their watershed limit, so they don't need an allocation. So we're good there. So that would fill up this little spot. No changes except.
Shane, I'm sorry, could you go back one slide, please? Okay, so at the back of the expansion area fencing east, is that going to be all ground cover then? Grass? No, just below that,
This.
to the right, right there. Okay,
I'm
because
sure
I'm
that-
noticing the slope. Is that going to be all grass or planted or what?
So from this corner here, which faces Old Betty Ford, it would go along the edge here, which
Yeah.
matches up with about that slope. So it kind of would do this
So
number.
it'll just be all grass then,
Well, it'd be gravel.
gravel.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Any issue with that slope with runoff as far as soil into the ditch?
It would have to comply with the erosion standards, either with a plan or measures to address the current plan and accommodating this area being less than an acre.
I see the guardrail. Does that mean there's like a creek down below there?
Yes, this drops off pretty significantly.
Okay.
There's quite a bit of topo along this area of Old Betty Ford. So nothing's changed around the site. Of course, they haven't started yet, but the mini storage probably will be forthcoming soon. I think there's probably not much to go over with the land use stuff. It's just a minor change. Didn't receive any phone calls regarding this. And you have on page 6, the consistency statement and reasonableness too. Any questions?
All right, Shane. Is Mr. Morgan here, and anything he'd like to add?
I think the engineer may be on Zoom.
Okay. Engineer Samuel King.
Correct. And most likely he would only be if you had a question for him.
Anyone have any question for the applicant or the engineer? All right, then if the board would like, I'll offer up a statement of consistency and reasonableness. Statement of consistency in the form of a motion, Z04-20 request.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, we need to do the public hearing.
Got so excited. Public hearing. All right, we'll open the floor to public hearing. Is there anyone that would like to speak for or against, or just have any comment about this? All right, hearing none, we'll close the floor and offer as a motion this statement of consistency. Z04-20 request is consistent with Area 3 of the Eastern Land Use and along Highway I-85 corridor. Property is also located adjacent to a regional node at Old Betty Ford Road, I-85. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Offer as a statement of reasonableness, this motion, the request is consistent with Area 3 of the Eastern Land Use Plan and along Highway I-85 corridor. Property is also located adjacent to the regional node at Old Beatty Ford Road, I-85. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, then do we have a motion to approve Z04-20 amendment?
So moved.
All right, Craig and Jim, motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Very much. All right, item number 6, Valerie Steele, Transit Director. Valerie has a presentation for us. I think this is one she gave to us earlier, but she'll give it to us again to kind of refresh our memories.
Good afternoon. This is similar to the presentation that I provided for the budget workshop session, with minor adjustments, and I will point them out to you. Rowan Express stops in Salisbury, China Grove, Landis, and Kannapolis, and it connects Salisbury Transit, Concord, Kannapolis, which is CK Ryder, and Amtrak stations to our system. Rowan Express, at least for FY22, I feel the service should be discontinued. Unfortunately, it's not highly utilized. It's an ineffective use of the county funds we do have available, and our grant funding received is not enough to cover the cost. From July 1st to June 30th, we solely used CARES Act funds to provide the service. There were no local funds available, and as of July 1, 2021, there will be no funds available. First off is cost, and this is not touching on the human cost, which I'll say something about in closing, but this is a financial cost. For 9 months, our net expenses were $158,816. The operating cost broken down versus fares is how we came up with the net expenses. Total rides were 6,853, which averages the cost per ride of $23.17. The fare we receive, if we get it, some individuals ride free, and we do not receive a $1 fare if there's a transfer. So if they come from CK Ryder or from Salisbury, we don't get the $1 either. So at a $23 per ride with a $1 fare, it's not effective. A question had been asked about increasing fares. People don't want to pay a $1 for it now. So to me, that's not going to encourage more ridership if we were to try to make it $5. And obviously, if we made it $20, no one would use the service. Number 2, the vehicles. It puts the higher mileage on them, requires a CDL endorsement for the driver. It's a larger vehicle, which means it's a greater replacement cost when we do replace it. And these vehicles do have increased wear and tear, more tires, more brakes, needing more alignments. These vehicles do go on 85. Our other vehicles tend not to. A little less wear and tear on them. Number 3, the operating hours. Because of this route, it extends staffing from 4:30 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. It's a 15-hour day. It's difficult to cover that with shifts, and it's difficult with DOT regulations since the drivers are only supposed to drive for 8 hours to split up the day. If we discontinue Express for FY22, our hours will go down to a 12-hour day, 5:30 a.m., 5:30 p.m. Number 4, ridership. We average, and this is where the items in yellow are a little different. I did send this updated version after the budget session, but initially when I did the statistic, I used 30 days to divide it out, and our service really is 20 days a month since we don't operate on weekends. So this is an updated number. It increased it to an average of 2.5 riders per revenue hour, and that's across 2 vehicles. So not a huge increase, but I believe was 1.8 when I had it at 30 days, and it went to 2.5, dividing it over 20 days of service. The average cost of service per hour remains the same, $58.82. And if you add in the hourly wage of the driver, not including insurance or benefits, that increases that it costs $71.82 per service hour.
Could you explain? It seems to me in the first couple slides, you said that there was a ridership of 6,800.
That's for the 9 months that we've had from July 1, 2020 through June 30th. That's the data I have available to pull from right now for this month, we had 6,853 rides.
Okay, rides. But then you're showing in a couple other slides that you only have 2.5 per hour.
Per revenue hour. So when our vehicles are out driving on the revenue hour, we have 2.5 people spread across the 2 vehicles.
And but that's only 20 folks a day or during 8 hours.
So we average 38 trips per day and 2.5 hours per revenue hour. And this is based off the data that I'm able to get from our system. Everything's done on paper for this, so there probably is some room for error. And I apologize in that, but.
No, it's so confusing because of, I use the simplified math, which I always do, and you don't take riders on Saturdays and Sundays.
Correct.
So that's only 5 days. So, okay, I'm sorry to stop you. Go ahead.
Oh, no problem. The intention of Rowan Express was a commuter route. I was told majority use it to commute to work. I've ridden Express. I don't find that to be the situation based on where people got off. I tried to ask, many people didn't want to talk to me on Express. There are occasional uses, appointment shopping, visiting friends, and the connections to either get all the way to Charlotte or to Amtrak. Rowan Express is the only part of Rowan Transit that users do have another option. They have the ability to physically get to this transportation, pickup stop, and on and off the vehicle. All of our other response is what we call demand response. In FY20, we had over 64,000 trips of demand response. And in FY 2019, we had over 71,000. There is a human cost in Rowan Transit, in any transit, to remove a service, but we're being asked to do more with less, like all transits are. And reallocating the resources is, in my opinion, how we can do more with less and increase our demand service. And the demand services are door to door, and they're to provide life-sustaining service for someone. Lastly, if there is someone who has been using Express to get to and from work, and it is their only option to do that, or it's going to create an undue hardship by removing it, we may be able to work through the process of qualifying them under another grant. I can't promise that. It's all based on what the grant requirements are, but there is funding that we receive that is to be used for transport to work in an urban setting. So there may be funds available for people that truly need it so that they're still able to get to their job. And lastly, like I said, as of July 1, 2021, we will have no funding available, grant or in the budget, to support Rowan Express.
The 71,000 demand response trips, is that through a different program grant?
Yes.
And what is, where do we get that, and what's the budget for something of that?
So we have other grants, home and community care. We have ROPE, which we may or may not get this year. All of those support people with disabilities or seniors. We have a grant that allows us to transport to Rowan Vocational for individuals that have disabilities to go and work. Any grant we can get, we go for. What has supported part of Rowan Express is the ROPE funding, and it was cut last year. I don't know what will happen with it this year. It's in the budget, but it was in the budget last year and got cut. It could happen again because of CARES money.
So the position that we're being asked, what's the total amount of these 6,000 trips? 100 and what? 158,000.
That's the net expenses after we reduce the fares from the operating cost.
So there won't be any funds to pay for that. So that'll be a net cost to the county. And so your position is we have a lot of folks that are more needy that if we're going to spend the 158,000, we'd be better suited spending it there. Is that what you're saying?
That's when I weigh out the human cost of it, it's not about dollars, it's about what are we doing with the dollars. And currently we have 16 people on a dialysis wait list for 1 day a week. They've been on the list since 2019. We don't have the funding available. So if there were to have close to $200,000 available, there are people that truly need it for life-sustaining services, just to stay alive, their groceries, or to go to a doctor's appointment, versus running a service that occasionally has no one on it.
Any other questions for Valerie? Thank you, Valerie.
And the net expenses, that is only based off 9 months. So it doesn't include a full year's amount of data. So if you were going to fund it for an entire year, we would need to look at additional funds on top of 160.
125,000 is what the room. All right, any other questions for Valerie?
Does this the vehicles used in this, do they have any equipment that helps handicapped people or somebody with disability?
One has a lift, the other doesn't, I believe, and that was just how they were set up to be replaced previously. Our goal going forward, any vehicle we replace, like the 2 we have coming online, will have lifts. So it'll be a reallocation of the resource to use them for on-demand. And on-demand is also referred to as shared ride. So it's where we can go to a certain zone in the county and pick up a bunch of people and bring them to their appointments or things and then go back and pick them up. So they're running all day doing shared ride. So the vehicle's not reserved for one specific service. They can be going to RVO with one and then a medical appointment and then over to dialysis and then pick someone up at Trinity Living Center. So it's just it provides us more use because the vehicle's not all the way down in Concord. It stays in Rowan County.
All right, if there's no other questions for Valerie, then we will have a public hearing for this and we'll open the floor. If there's anyone who would like to make comment.
Connie Byrne, and I live down in Kannapolis near Village Park. And I understand the financials of this. However, I would like to ask that this piece of it be analyzed for pre-pandemic use. Yes, we've had very decreased ridership over the last 9 months, but that's because of the pandemic and people weren't using it as much by any means. If I were to lose my transportation again, like I did for 9 months in 2016, if I wanted to come up here to these meetings, and I know that it's just me, the only way I would have to get here would be with the Express. There's no other bus that runs from Kannapolis up to here, unless I wanted to take the train from Kannapolis to Salisbury, which is fairly expensive. There are a number of people who do rely on this service, yes, to get to work. But, if you discontinue this, where are they supposed to go? Yes, you say there are other ways, alternatives, but those are potential alternatives. So I would urge you to rework the cost on this to take into account the time before the 9 months. I mean, for Pete's sake, nobody went anywhere over the last 9 months because they were told not to. And I have ridden the Kannapolis system many times, and because I didn't have a car for a while, one reason or another, and I mean, I've used it even in the last 4 months. If I didn't have that, I wouldn't have gotten to work. If I had been working up in like Landis or China Grove, this would have been my only way of getting there. I have the luxury of being retired and not having to go someplace. unless I choose to. But there are a lot of people who do have to be places. Take this away, how do they get there? Just asking you to take that into consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Connie. Are there any other comments? Laura? We'll close the hearing. Valerie, do you have any pre-20 numbers on this? I think that's a fair question.
I haven't done the math yet. FY 2020, we had a total for the whole year of 14,243 rides. If you go to 19, 13,751, 18, 15,701, and 17, 17,877. The other aspect of Rowan Express was part of the contract with MB. It was required for us to have a certain number of miles under that account in that contract. And Rowan Express, as well as weekend service, was a way to reach the minimum mileage that was required under their contract. And when MB came back with the 44% increase, we moved the system in-house. And so we're only in-house from October of 2020. So the data I provided you is as we are an in-house system, which is why I focused in on that. The numbers I gave you from the previous years are correct. However, that's under a different way of operating in the MB contract in a minimum number of miles versus how we do it now that we're in-house.
And Valerie, those numbers are not necessarily different individuals. That's
Total rides,
total rides, which could be,
the same person getting on and off
Yeah.
multiple
Our
times.
numbers, well, what about our numbers? Did you say the same for ours? Or are those individual riders?
Those are rides. I can get you the specific number that we serve, but there are more people benefiting from our on-demand response than from our express service.
Yeah, even the highest year, 2017, 17,800, 2018 was 15,700, 2019, 13,700, 2020. Now this is July of 19. End of June of 2020, 14,243. And if we annualize that 6853, we end up with 9137 for the full year. And the last question I'd ask you is, versus we're comparing that to 71,000 demand response trips. So I asked you about this, and what is our budget for that demand, those demand routes? Do you have a total budget for that?
No, it's all based off the grant funding. So there's in transit, there's 6 different budgets, 5 or 6, because they each are based off the grant budget. So we don't have a general budget. Everything is grant and then local match. There's no other funding. It's balanced based off the grants and the local match, and that's all we have to work within.
So do you know what our local match is?
Local match every year is different that you
Based
approve.
on
So it's
grants.
usually 80-20. Sometimes it's 90-10. It depends on if it's an operating expense or a capital expense. Capital is done a little different, but each grant has a different local match. And some have no local match, like CARES when we got that. And sometimes for 1 year, they'll say there is no local match, but then the next year it'll come back as 50-50 sometimes as well. It just depends on which grant that we're talking about. And some of that was in the previous PowerPoint for the actual budget session. I shortened it just to focus in on Express for today.
Just one more question. You mentioned that there were other ways to assist people. And if we were to discontinue the Express as far as rides, have we done that at all? Or is it something other municipalities use? Could you just kind of maybe speak a little bit more about those opportunities?
The option would be to rope in the, no pun intended, because it would use rope funds for it, but it would rope in the piece of urban employment door-to-door service with our shared ride. So if somebody had no other option and we could qualify them under grant funding, it's possible that we could pick them up at their location, take them to their job and vice versa. And that would come out of the funding, if it's received, that we used to use the small portion of for Express. So rope has 3 pieces and each piece has a different percentage you're allowed that the FTA assigns to you. And that piece we could either use for Rowan vocational opportunities, or like I said, if there is someone we can get qualified, we'll do everything we can to reduce the hardship.
Yeah, and I know that RVO really needs that service. So, thank you.
Aaron, did you have something?
I was just going to share that the recommended budget for Rowan Transit, not necessarily reflective of, it's not a true number because we did reduce some of the transit and senior services and moved it. We moved about $200,000. But the increase, including that move, is $562,000, which is a 25.5% increase, and that is not including Rowan Transit. So just make it clear that by eliminating this service, the board is not, if you adopt the proposed budget, you're increasing.
Still going up by $500,000.
Yes, and that, at least 200,000, because we moved 218,000 from senior services where there was transit in there just to get all the transit in one department. But yeah, around 200,000, it's going up.
What are we talking about when you say that they have to qualify for a grant to ride the demand service?
So majority of the people that utilize our service, the shared ride door to door for their life-saving, life-sustaining, they qualify under grant funding, and it's paid through that. Based on their disability or their needs, we have money that will allow us to support them and provide the ride.
They're going to dialysis or anything, there's not a problem.
Correct.
Or going to see their doctor if they have a continuous treatment, I assume.
Correct. And the grant funding is obviously based mostly on your needs base. So they'll look at your level of disability, they'll look at your level of income, and that determines based on need, first priority, second priority, third priority.
But the Express would let anybody get on and ride, period.
Correct.
Regardless of need.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, didn't we also have a number of letters in support of discontinuing the Express and moving that money towards our seniors and those in need from different organizations?
There was a letter from the Transit Advisory Board that is made up of, you have to help me, Valerie, Rufty Homes,
Trinity Living Center.
Trinity Living, Vocational.
Dialysis isn't on it yet.
Parks and Rec.
Parks and Rec, our health department's represented on that as well. And then we have 3 spots for general members, which will be filled July 1, I hope.
So to clarify that, there is a transportation board. What
Yes,
they
sir.
call it.
Advisory Board, yes, sir.
Transportation
It's made up of stakeholders.
Of stakeholders, and they reviewed this same information, and what was their recommendation?
They provided a letter indicating they felt that we should discontinue Express for FY22 in order to reallocate our resources towards more of the on-demand shared ride service.
All right, any other questions for Valerie? All right, well, we can go along with the recommendation. We can punt the recommendation, or we can table it. What's the?
Well, Mr. Chairman, as much as I hate to discontinue a public transportation option, I really think that we have a huge need in this county for medical services and getting people to, I mean, when I hear that we've got 16 people on the waiting list for dialysis since 2019, to me, that is incredibly serious. And I agree with our Transportation Advisory Board recommendation. And if you need a motion, I would make that motion to discontinue our express at this time.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
All right, further discussion.
If you could just indicate the date, and it might be easier if it's effective July 1st, so that gives a little bit of time for the transition.
All right, any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. We'll move on. We've got the budget that we want to go over right now. It is 4 minutes until 5. I'd like to move that we take a 4-minute recess. There's something that I need to check with the manager on.
Mr. Chairman, 4 minutes to 4.
What did I say?
5. I mean,
I
I don't mind taking a recess. What time?
For dinner. We'll meet y'all back after dinner. No, 4 minutes to 4. So in 4 minutes, we'll be back. We're going to take a 4-minute recess. That was not a 4-minute break. That's okay. We got all night. All right, we're going to delve into our budget process now. County Manager Aaron Church has a budget presentation for us. Aaron?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's on its way. Okay. So first, I'd like to thank the board for the privilege and honor to present the budget this year. It's balanced and it's prepared in accordance with the Local Government and Fiscal Control Act. It is. It also addresses inflation. Specifically, one of the ways it addresses inflation is all the fuel for county vehicles has been doubled. And that is approximately $700,000. Next slide, please. The total budget is $195,500,574. That includes the general fund at $174,457,202. The fire district fund at $7,047,794. And that number does include the tax rate increase requested. Emergency telephone fund is $563,748. Risk management, $1,429,894. Landfill fund, $8,324,499. Airport fund, $3,225,257. And the water fund, $452,180. The adopted budget in fiscal year 21, the one we're currently in, was $153,521,214. That was a reduction from the fiscal year 20 budget, which I believe was approximately $158 million. And we reduced the revenue substantially going into the we were in the middle of the pandemic had started. At the time things were being closed and we were very concerned about sales tax revenue, and we ended up being very wrong in our projection. as you'll see as we move through the budget, but the requested amount was $312,814,129, and the recommended is $174,457,202. This is a $20 million increase, well, $20,935,988 increase from last year's budget, which is a 13.6% increase. Next slide. You're going to see why the increase is so big here in a second. The property tax base increased about 1%. The collection rate, there is no change. The tax rate remains the same in this budget. The big change is the sales tax and the $27 million that we're expect to receive this year and next year from the federal government. And we also have received prior COVID money, but the sales tax alone for fiscal year 21, we're projecting it's going to be $5.8 million, or about 25% above what I projected last year, which is really, I mean, that is a bad miss. I mean, you don't want to be 25% wrong on a revenue projection, but you know, at the time we thought things were going to collapse, so that's what we projected. Interestingly enough, it's only about 4% above what the actual sales tax collected was in 2020. So even though it's a huge number for this year and the largest increase I've ever seen in a budget, it's really not that much more than what we had in 2020 overall. And I believe this is a conservative, as hard as that is to say, a conservative estimate. I think the sales tax is probably going to be more than that when everything is said and done. Next slide. What's interesting to me is this increase in sales tax. The projection is based on real receipts and real activity that's going on. And if you look what the Federal Reserve called the Great Inflation that happened in the late 60s, early 80s, the highest year was in, I think, 82 at about 14%. So based on that, you know, regardless of what you hear on the news or you know, the facts are things are increasing at a really large rate, and I think there is going to be inflation. On top of that, the county as a whole, all Rowan citizens, including the schools, municipalities, and Rowan County, are we're going to receive well over $100 million from the federal government. And it's very restrictive in what we can do with it. So, you know, there's very specific restrictions on how it can be spent. The schools have certain restrictions. The municipalities and the counties' restrictions are similar, or more similar. But there is a lot of money coming into the county. And this budget, if approved as presented, it will expend approximately between 9 and 11 million of the total 27 million, if every dime that is budgeted is spent with ARP that is in this budget. So as we go through, you'll see there's certain things that are ARP related. And as Jim and I were working earlier today, and this is just an estimate, but there's about $16 or $17 million left in ARP money after this budget is approved. Now, that assumes, as we go through it, that a lot of things are going to happen that may or may not. So next slide. The fund balance appropriation, it's an 8.8% increase from the 2020 adopted budget. You know, last year is kind of an anomaly. 6.7 million is what we used to balance the budget, and that was basically, we froze all capital. So, you know, you add back in the school debt and the capital, and you're getting closer to, you know, even though we're not adding the whole school at one time, I mean, the large capital for school at one time, that's basically where that fund balance, plus or minus $1 million, that number was derived from last year. And this budget is kind of things back to normal. We are using more restricted fund balance than unrestricted, but other than that, that's not an unusually high number. Next slide. So this budget continues to increase our savings account for the West End Plaza. So if this budget is adopted on July 1st, that morning, Jim is going to transfer. Is that a Monday morning? Well, yes. Yeah. So, you know, basically what happens on, you know, sometime owner shortly after July 1st, 1.7 million gets transferred to that savings account. And at that time, there should be approximately $6 million available for future improvements at the West End Plaza. Next slide, please. This budget purchases $2.4 million in vehicles, and these are not financed. Previously, they have been financed. These are not going to be financed, due in part to some available sales tax revenue. As you can see, emergency services, they're going to be getting, I believe that's 3 ambulances and 1 truck. Transit, which a lot of the transit is reimbursable. The sheriff, animal enforcement, facilities management, and building inspection. Next slide. There was a request for 37 new positions. The budget the cost was about 2.3 million. The budget recommended 5 of those positions to be permanent and 5 temporary positions to be paid for with ARP funding. And as a side note, the board did approve adding 5 new positions to social services earlier tonight. So that is one thing we'll need to add to the revised budget sheet, which won't be really hard to figure out because those positions will carry over. But the 5 new positions is an accountant 2 in finance. We have reorganized a lot of the service-related departments that serve other departments in the county, and risk management and internal auditing and purchasing have all been, they are now under human resources. We have eliminated the risk manager position, and the accountant 2 will help finance. Register of Deeds is a deputy register of deeds. Building inspections, I believe that based on what Thomas has told me, they are in sincere need of a new employee, that things are really, really busy, and I'm surprised we haven't gotten complaints yet because things are really busy in inspections, and I think that this position is needed really bad. The health department, the environmental health specialist, and those are 2 new positions, and those, you know, we've talked about that for the last year, so I won't go into that, but I think they're needed really bad. So out of 37 positions, these are the 5 positions recommended. Next slide, please. Temporary positions, a finance analyst. This is somebody that can handle all the ARP, which is the American Recovery Plan, can handle all the receipts and the accounting for this money, for the 27 million that we're going to be spending, and it does allow you to spend money for that. And once that's gone away, this position will end. Emergency services is 4 community paramedics. That was a very successful program. Even though the pandemic is, appears to be, we're in a better position than we were. The rules have changed. We're allowed to do things we weren't, and a vaccine is available for those who are interested in taking it, and it appears to be working. There may not be as much of a workload, but there's lots of good things they can do out in the community for flu. And if COVID-19 continues, if it continues to be a problem or becomes, we don't know the future, but there's funds available to do this. It was a good program. This will also buy 4 brand new, is it 4 vehicles, trucks? Brand new vehicles with the ARP money, and 4 heart monitors that will go in each truck. And they will be available to go to homes for people that have just been released to the hospital or going to the hospital that have, in the COVID-19, those that were sick and needed help. They even, as much as buying groceries for folks is what they'll do. So I think it's a good position and a worthwhile expenditure of the ARP funding. Next slide, please. The cost of living is 2%. Last year, there was not a cost of living for county employees. It also recommends premium pay at $2,000 per permanent, full-time, and part-time benefited employees. Every employee will receive the same amount. That is authorized by ARP, and that is not county money. And I think the way the calculation will end up working out, any employee that earned less than approximately $125,000 a year, but will be eligible for this premium pay. And the employee would be eligible for that pay so long as they had worked, because it's paid by hour, I think up to $13 an hour. And so long as they had worked enough hours, that would be available to the employees in July. The longevity and merit is a program that we've been doing for the last several years. The purpose of this is hopefully that if we continue this, then what you see below will be not the last year, but next year will be the year that we won't need to continue to do pay studies, because hopefully the longevity will be helping with compression. And those that have been here the longest, employees with 15 years or more, receive 2%, so long as their performance evaluations so long as their performance evaluations meet the criteria that makes them eligible. Below that is the one third of the study, and the study started 2 years ago. It got paused during the pandemic, and this is bringing the study. This is getting this, even though it's 1/3 after this year, 2/3 will be done, and only an additional 1/3 will be required. And hopefully the longevity and merit, aside from, huge or hyperinflation, this will sustain our employees and it will reduce the need to do a pay study every 3 or 4 years. So as you see, it's broken down by department, and that's the dollar amount that will go to employees in that department. Within the budget book, it doesn't have names of the employees, although it, after the raises are given, it would be public record, but there's turnover, employees come, go, retire, et cetera. And instead of having names, it's just basically a formula. So any employee can look in the budget book underneath their department, and there is a memo that Kelly did a really good job, Kelly and Jim working on it, that outlines exactly how the pay study applies to each individual employee, where they should be able to determine their pay. Is that correct? Good, thank you. Next slide, please. So Cabarrus Community College, they requested 54 million. Part of that, the largest part of that is to build the new building and facilities. Since we're still in a pandemic, things are still somewhat uncertain. I don't think it's the right time to increase taxes by 3.5 cents. So this budget doesn't recommend building the building this year, but it does appropriate $1 million to assist the college with architect fees in anticipation of the project starting in fiscal year 2023. Now, when the building is built, the bonds have been sold, the county would reimburse itself the $1 million from the general obligation bond proceeds. So if we sold 40 million, then 39 would go towards construction and 1 million would come back to the county. Next slide, please. The budget does include $38 million in new debt. The airport, there's 12.5 million. That is for 5 new hangars, 2 large hangars and 3 smaller hangars. One of the hangars is for public safety purposes, and the other one is for economic development purposes. The annual debt payment, I think, will be 1.7 million. And if you divide that by 2, is around 800 and some thousand. And when we were doing the budget, it was real late at night, and instead of going back and recalculating the debt, it occurred to us that we had also frozen the landscape architect plan. So the remaining amount of a half a year's worth of debt service, I think, is 266,000. Let me just double check that will be available immediately July 1st to go toward completing the renovations of the architect design that we had started before the pandemic took place. Yeah, 1.7 million for 10 years. The 1,150,000 includes 266,000 that will go towards the landscaping project. The West End Plaza renovation is 15 million, and these annual debt payments are estimates and budget numbers, but as you know, if interest rates change, they change. 15 million was the number originally talked about. If the budget's approved and the board, wants to move forward with the project, you've got the 15 million plus the 6 million that you could move forward with the project. The radio infrastructure and new radios, is Alan here? So Alan, this is going to take care of everybody's needs throughout Rowan County insofar as handheld and mobile radios. Is that a true statement? Okay, thank you. So that is initially the quarter-cent sales tax. All right, was it quarter cent or half a cent? Quarter cent. The quarter cent 46, Article 46. Initially, when it was approved, it was to buy radios. Well, the debt service is rolling off and it's time to buy new radios. So a portion of the Article 46 quarter cent sales tax is available to do that without putting any additional strain on the taxpayers or increasing property tax. This should take care of every public safety agency in the county, and I see we have lots of firemen here tonight, so raise your hand if you think it's not going to, but we think this will do it. So the total amount of debt is 38 million. 3.6 million will be the annual debt payment for this year, and then that would go up next year by an additional 800,000. Next slide, please. So when I was talking earlier about the ARP money, the way this budget is structured, it is spending some of the money. And you'll remember at the work session, there was a sheet that, you know, we had like a lot of things. Some of them were made up, some were not. But one of the things that this includes is 4 million for water, sewer, and stormwater for the schools. So if you have 27 million, subtract 4 million from it. If the schools end up spending it or need that much. Add the premium pay, I think that was approximately 2 million. So there's 6 million. Then you add the community paramedics, the trucks, there's a transfer, which I don't know if we can transfer to the airport fund now because that's a revenue thing. We may have to undo that. So they recently, as you know, changed the rules and we can't offset revenue. So one of the things in there was airport. We're probably going to need to undo that transfer. There's $1 million that was in the revised thing I sent out tonight that would come into the water fund. We would put it with the capital reserve fund for the lead and copper issues. So that gets us to 7 million. So, you know, the estimate I gave you earlier, there's some other things on the sheet that I can't quite remember, but we're getting close to spending almost 7 million. I'm going to say a couple more probably in this budget, which is going to leave the ARP funds, you know, somewhere between 16, 17, 18 million dollars will be left. Now, if the schools don't need that much for water and sewer and stormwater, because it was just a handful of schools that Anthony Van had identified, then of course that money would come back into the ARP fund and could be redistributed. So I know I kind of got really out of order, but starting at the top, aside from the 4 million, last year was 36 million to the schools. The funding should be the same based on the average daily population of students at 35,487,000. That is based off of I think it's 1,900. Sorry. $1,949.51 per student is how that is the basis for that number. The current capital, last year they were budgeted to receive 2,291,844. The agreement that was in place is no longer in place, and so this year recommends providing $854,731 for capital. Debt service for the schools is to provide 55 million to build a new school. The way that's budgeted, the 2,524,000 will only pay for a half a year of the school. So this is assuming that the school the construction doesn't start until January. And then there's architect fees of 2.1 million that the county would provide, as a payment up front to the schools. And then once you get to the construction part where things are being, pay apps are coming in, or no, before pay apps, when you go to the LGC and do the financing and all that, is what is right at the exact same time you're doing the bid, so everything starts really fast. And at that point in time, we would reimburse ourselves the $2.1 million. So if it's 55 million and they use all of the 2.1 million, then the actual cost of the project could be 52.9. Ideally, we wouldn't take the money back in. We would just put it towards the debt, to pay the debt down, because it is being absorbed in this budget and it wouldn't be a reoccurring expense. Next slide, please. City of Kannapolis, based on the same formula of the $1,949.51 per student. That's a projection. The current capital is $60,000. So the total amount recommended for Kannapolis is $2,577,280. And then the charter schools, the total proposed funding is a really big increase. And that's just based on the numbers and the projection. And the way that works, the money is sent to the school systems and the school system gives the money to the charter school. So based on what the population is. Next slide. Oh, sorry.
Does that include faith? Is that why it's?
It includes it. Yeah, I'm sure it may, but it also includes there's another charter school in the county, and then all the charter schools outside the county that students go to.
I guess my question would be higher that number if faith has more students.
It could be, but I don't know the answer. Does it include? I've heard that there's 500 students capacity at Faith. I don't know if that includes that or if it includes an estimate of the first year and then an estimate of the other. I know it does include other charter schools that are not in the county. So I know I said a whole lot and said it real fast. But here's a few, and it's actually some good news. But this changes some, and if the board has things they want to add or change, it would also change. So right now, some revisions that have been made reduce the fund balance appropriation from what was it, 2.5 million. Not 2.12. $12.5 million would reduce it by 815,000. And so we'll start. One is IT. That's a mistake I made. I didn't include it in the budget. It was for inspections and development review process by Matrix. I intended to do it, just didn't do it. Another one is parks. That was reduced below what they can maintain. I don't know whether that was on purpose or accident, but it happened. Is Don here?
He was.
Oh, he was. He's left. Okay. Yeah. So one way or another, the number needs to be increased by 14,000. NC Forest, there's an expansion request for vehicle purchase, and that was overlooked, and they are coming tomorrow to meet because they need the vehicle, and You know, at any rate, it should have been recommended. Tourism and authority, lost revenue, that adds up to 510, almost $600,000 in expenditure to the tourism. The reason I added that in the last couple today was because that's one of the things on the ARP list that I know, well, I feel fairly confident that I think I know with 99% certainty that that is a eligible expense, and I know they need the money because they took a tremendous hit. They made lots of sacrifices, and they, as an agency, lost a lot of revenue. The reimbursement is to reimburse them for money they spent on ARP, not on ARP, on COVID-19 things to help businesses. And then the tourism miscellaneous, there's a lot of nonprofits that ask for additional money in the budget. It wasn't recommended because in a conversation with James, such as the Arts Council and some other, maybe the theaters, you know, some places that really struggled, he'll make grants to those agencies. With the tourism miscellaneous. The investing in our children, that is a line item that was in the budget 2 years ago. It was identified in the budget message. It was carried over this year, and it really doesn't need to be where it's at. It's kind of it's in a part of the budget where things come and go, or they may stay a while. But it's not really a good place for nonprofits. And it's in general government. So what this does is a commissioner asked that be eliminated from the recommended budget and reduced to zero, the line item identified there, and that it be reallocated to, which is shown number 8, to prevent child abuse, Rowan, triple P, intensive parenting. Which would be to add an appropriation for $40,000 there. Expenditure, partners in learning, commissioner requests to create a new line item in special appropriations, $40,000 for that one. And then Families First is request to increase the line item from $8,000 to $28,000 for Families First. And so that would so that deletes the recommendation of $100,000 out of general government, and it appropriates it to those agencies. Tourism expense, that is revenue that will be coming into the budget. And then Waterline Booster Station, that is something I'm fairly also confident we can use that money for that. So that will be bringing the revenue in. We'll take it and put it in a even though we've already done a budget amendment for that we'll put that money in that account. Once the project's over, whatever's left in the account will go back to the general fund. Now, if the project, including the engineer and any additional things we do, doesn't exceed $1 million, then of course we would have to bring some of that money back into the ARP funds to make sure we weren't putting it in the general fund. So another change that Tanya Parnell has emailed the board about today and talked to me about today and for several years is eliminating the pet fee. There's currently a pet fee, and when you get your taxes, if you put, you're supposed to list the number of pets you have, and if you do, you're assessed a fee, and then that gets added onto your property bill. Randy can speak to the technical issues of it, but it's something that most counties don't do. What did we have, 18,000? 18,000 projected in revenue. So if you eliminate that fee from the budget, we would need to add a number 13 to this list, which would reduce the revenue by 18,000, and then the fund balance appropriation number would go down.
Is that 18,000 we're actually receiving each year?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What does that go to?
General fund.
The right to folks to have a pet.
Doesn't it mess up the tax bills, Randy, with the new software too?
It's a difficult process, then to add pet fees, because so few people are doing it.
Per animal?
Per animal, yeah. So you got 10 animals, it's $5 an animal. I think it's just for domestic animals or cats and dogs. But no, I don't know. I don't think I've ever seen where it was adopted. It used to be every county had stuff like that, but I don't think many of them do anymore.
Therapeutic chicken is popular these days. Can we deal with that now so we don't have to come back to it? Can we delete that fee?
I just wrote it down.
Okay, can we just make a motion now to delete the pet fee?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right.
And with that, I'd be glad
Cutting taxes right there.
to answer any questions the board may have.
Yeah.
So just curious, so the ARP money for the water line booster station, do you transfer that into the water fund? Or do we just pay that directly out of ARP?
Hold on. So, I mean, the way we're kind of handling it right now is that the ARP is separate, and I can, we're keeping up with it in a spreadsheet, the one that was presented to the board. And if you want to see that today, I can show it to you. And so what we're going to do basically is by adding $1 million, we'll reduce that spreadsheet, bring it over into the water fund, and we'll probably at some point ask for it to go into a capital projects fund. I can't remember if the $1 million budget, was it $1 million we did? Did that go into a capital projects ordinance or just the water fund? Yeah. So it'll sit in the water fund with that other $1 million as, restricted. I don't think it's going to be that much. Well, I know the booster pump station is not going to be that much, but some other things we may do as time moves forward. And so at the end of the day, what is in that water fund, if the water line were to be given to Salisbury and Salisbury took over, then the remaining funds in the water fund would come back to the general fund.
So it comes originally from the ARP?
The $1 million I put in,
Yeah.
that is the wrong one, Randy. Or maybe not. Okay, well, that's fine. No, that's the wrong one. There's another one. I'll email it to you. So yeah, if the budget is adopted as presented, it brings $1 million out of the ARP into the water fund where it would just sit there.
Okay. But my question is if it's reimbursed, if Salisbury takes over and it's reimbursed, you're saying it's going into the general fund rather than back in the ARP fund?
Well, so if we already moved $1 million of county money into the water fund to pay for the booster pump station and other miscellaneous lead and copper issues before we knew there were ARP funds. So that's currently in there. What this budget amendment does is brings money from the ARP in there. We can go ahead and transfer the other $1 million out back into the general fund, or we can just wait till the project's over. But it gets the ARP money to where it can be spent on the booster pump stations versus the general fund money.
What's our time limitation on spending ARP money?
I think it's 3 to 4 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we got a lot of time,
I didn't
and
know
it's
the building.
also the project can start up until that time.
Okay. I have not seen the list of approved uses for ARP, but I believe, Mr. Manager, that that's all connected to COVID, correct?
Unless it's water and sewer.
Unless it's water and sewer.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I can put that on up on the screen and show you the list we've had and everything on that list that's going into the current budget, if you'd like for me to.
No, that's fine. My only concern, is that there are other things COVID-related that I believe will need to be done for the public health department. And I'm just hoping that the rest of this ARP money stays put until the health department has the opportunity to come and discuss that with you.
Said 16, 17, or 18 million dollars.
Yeah, let me, if I could, I'm just going to,
And what we're doing right now is just showing those projects that we currently are ready to begin that qualify for the ARP. And that will flow through this budget. And remaining just is sitting and waiting for us to determine what to do.
yeah, do y'all want me to share that spreadsheet?
It's what it's the spreadsheet that we went over last month.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we can, it's fine.
Okay.
It was my understanding that that spreadsheet was suggestions. So,
That's correct, but by adopting this budget, the recommended budget is moving money from the ARP to pay for different things. So, and I can, Randy, if you can pull up that spreadsheet. And I can kind of just show you what I did earlier. So we'll start at the top. So Randy, if you could, where you see lost revenue replacement, that's no longer an option. So let's delete those, okay? For both years. And before you delete it, you can leave it deleted. Before he did that, the amount of ARP available for spending was negative almost 800,000, okay? Because everything would identify. So we'll delete the lost revenue replacement. And then the next line item is the full-time employee bonus of 2,000. So we're not going to, if the budget is adopted, that moves from this spreadsheet into the budget and it gets paid out. The next one is salaries, and
that was for hazard pay, correct?
Yeah, it's referred to as premium pay, and it's based on several definitions, but counties, I think all employees are eligible so long as they were working in the office. The next line is salaries, and that should all be for the community paramedics. And as you see, that goes across 4 years. So, that adds up. Then you've got overtime, part-time, benefits, then 16,000 for precinct workers, janitorial supplies, vehicle supplies, other supplies, motor fuel, office equipment, vehicles, that's the trucks we were talking about, equipment, furniture, other, and then we get to transfer to the airport. So that's currently in the budget, but as I was sitting here talking, I don't think we can leave it in the budget and we'll do a budget amendment later, but I don't think we can use it for that.
Because that was just replacing lost revenue.
Yeah, we were replacing lost revenue, and that, since it's a part of the county government, I don't think we do. So Randy, if you'll just delete that one. The next one is the booster pump station. So we're going to leave that one because this budget is moving that money, if approved, from the ARP funds into the water fund to be spent for that. The municipal water project, that involved potential debt payoff. The ARP does not let you pay off debt. So I'm going to delete that one because I don't think we can do that with the money. The RCC sewer and water, none of that was actually put into this budget. It's stuff we've talked about, and we can go back at any time after the budget's adopted and add stuff to RCC. So Randy, let's delete all those all the way until you get to EDC reserve, water and sewer. And I put $1 million a year in case we have economic development. So that's not something that's really in the budget. So Randy, delete all those, the $1 million for economic development.
That was the biggest question I had.
Okay, so that's all deleted. Rowan, Salisbury water and sewer, you would change that number, Randy, to 4 million. Because that's what, if the budget's adopted, that's what goes into the budget for the schools to spend on water and sewer and stormwater. Okay. The one that says stormwater, Randy, you would delete that one. Then we would leave all the tourism stuff. And then, the mental health related to COVID, since there is a potential, some other funding available. For the sake of conversation, if you wanted to delete that, Randy, because that was just a possibility, then you'll see at the bottom right-hand corner is what would be remaining for ARP funds.
Okay.
So I wanted you to see that to say this. If the board does not want to spend close to $10 million in ARP funds, you may want to cut some of this stuff. You may want to cut the water and sewer to the schools, or the tourism authority, or the community paramedic program, or the premium pay. I mean, you could cut any of that, and it would increase the amount of money you would have available in the ARP. But also want you to understand, when the budget is passed, the amount available is going to be closer to that number than not. Now, again, the schools may end up spending $500,000 and 35 million would go back into it. So yes, when this was initially shown, this is what, we might could do with it. We've learned a lot since then. And so does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, and that's fine to take the mental health money out as long as we're going to discuss that at a later date.
Right.
Thank you.
Does any other commissioners have questions about this spreadsheet?
I want to kind of bring something up from this spreadsheet.
Okay.
About the $4 million for the school system. I know a couple of us had talked about when we did the 40 and a half million. Last time we had a joint capital committee between us and the schools, which I think some of us are in favor of reinstituting that if we're going to give them the $55 million. But I think we should add the $4 million into that group for discussion, so we can really see if they need 4 million or if they need more than 4 million or less than 4 million. So if we are going to do that, I don't know if this is the time to bring that up, but.
And something you could do, I mean, because also rules can change, as we've seen. We could reduce the 4 million to 1 million in the budget. I mean, because the budget's just a planning document. And then we could take that million out for the next 4 years on this sheet but it would only commit 1 million of the funding for the Rowan and Salisbury schools, water and sewer projects. And if they have more, we could just amend the budget and bring it in from the ARP. But if you do that, well, you still have, it doesn't increase to 17 million. But it gives you the potential, if you see a need that's bigger than 17 million, then you haven't already committed the 4 million that's in the current budget for that. Now, as I understand it, all these construction projects, we have to submit online an email to the Treasury, and they may come back and deny every one of them. So we don't know. I haven't submitted one yet, but if the board felt more comfortable reducing the 4 million to 1 million, then Randy, just if you reduce that to 1 million, what happens to the yellow? Okay, then that puts our net savings up. I mean, not net savings, puts our ARP balance at 20 million, and it doesn't.
Spread that over. Right? Is that the right?
No, I was just saying what happened if you just said we're only going to spend $1 million on water and sewer without committing.
I don't have a problem with 4 million because there's not a lot of things we can spend this money on. I just think that we should have more discussion about it when we allocate it to them, working with them on it.
I agree with Commissioner Caskey. Unless they show me a need for the money, why set it up at 4 million? Because like most things, if you put it there, they're going to find a way to spend it, and doesn't necessarily mean they're spending it in the correct way. So I think Commissioner Caskey's right. We need to re-implement the Joint Capital Improvement Committee with the schools and let them give us a roadmap of where they want to go and what they expect the commission to be able to fund. And then we can work together to see what we can come up with a plan that allows us to try to meet their needs within our budget.
That also, I think Dr. Wallington would appreciate that. Even though commissioners stand and what are the learning opportunity for both of us, for he and the commissioners. So on that column D, is that go up, and so what is, okay, so that's last year then. So we wouldn't commit $1 million there because we're leaving that year, correct?
Yeah, and technically the 2 million would really need to be in the 2022 column, but since this is, I'm the only one that's got it, doesn't really matter, but because I can't spend any of it until y'all move it into the general fund.
So my last question on that 4 million, if we just put it as 1 million in this budget, does that affects the rest of our budget by 3 million?
Yeah, it cancels each other out.
Oh, because it's moving in, moving out.
Well, the budget still decreases by 3 million.
Revenue decreases, expense decreases.
Yeah.
So it doesn't affect at all what we're using from our fund balances.
No.
Gotcha.
It's just, the budget would go from 174 to 171. And that's the only thing that would change. And it would have no effect on anything other than you would be guaranteed that only 1 million was spent. But if the board says you want to have a joint meeting before any money is spent with school capital, including building a new school, then we'll apply the same rules to that too.
How soon, have we received, Aaron, the 13.5 million already?
No, ma'am. The application was on the agenda tonight, and we'll submit that tomorrow online, and I suspect we'll be getting it very soon.
Okay, so we should receive 13.5 million yet for this fiscal year, and then 13 and a half for the file.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And I'm trying to find that other sheet, Randy, and I can't find it. But I'm going to send you, this is the sheet with changes. Oh, 06. Okay, Randy, I think this is the right one. But it doesn't have the $18,000 in revenue for the animal fee. You get it?
Here, I haven't gotten it yet. I haven't gotten it yet.
Get it? It's still not the right one. It's fine. I think it's right. With the exception of it didn't include the 18. So like, then scroll down. Just put pet fee, remove, and then negative 18,000. Then scroll down a little bit. So the board can see right now, if you wanted to adopt the budget as presented, or let's say you wanted to add whatever, or take away whatever, the budget is not going to increase because what will happen is the fund balance appropriation is going to go down. So there's approximately $800,000 of decrease in the fund balance appropriation. So it would not be until $797,001 spent that you would have to change the budget.
Is that the president? Is that it?
Yes, sir, I'm done.
Mr. Chairman, and Mr. Manager, I just realized that we do have one urgent need at the health department in the it would fall under mental health. And that would be a second person in our port, on our port team to help with the peer counseling. We've had such an incredible increase, about 60% over previous year because of the pandemic and people are relapsing, that our current person is really starting to burn out. And I would appreciate it if we could put that in as ARP funds.
New jobs.
We're adding the new ones right now too, so we forgot.
No, this is health department and this is port.
We hadn't added, that's something I forgot. The new ones have to be added. So it's really not 7, it's going to go down here in a minute once we pull their salaries.
The port position full-time,
Yes, it would be full-time.
it can be paid out of ARP.
It would, I believe it can fall under mental health, yes. So that would qualify for ARP.
Y'all had enough yet?
No, but they're probably starving with this.
That's Jim.
So, one of the chiefs want to make a pizza run for us? I don't see any hands going up. Y'all get the alligator arms, don't you?
Now this number is somewhat overestimated because they're not calculating the actual down to the thousands on what the reimbursement would be.
Is it 50/50?
I don't know if these are 50/50 or 60/40. Do you know, Kelly?
Child Protective Services.
Child Protective Service.
I just got handed one and sat down. 8 positions in a total of 31,000 total.
Yeah, there's 5.
All he's asking for is to upgrade them to that.
No, there's just 5 positions.
Yeah.
No, how could it be 250? How could that be?
construction workers.
I'm afraid of who's in that committee too. Just, I don't know, it's a budget, so I don't know if you can do that. Oh, here, let me get this.
Throw it out there, see if it stinks. You're part of the third study this next year. You're in the last third like us. But that'll be a while. That's a whole year. Who has that?
That's why they just blurred it out.
Okay. Anything else? we need to go over fire tax. I'm not sure, are we at that point, Mr. Manager?
Yes, sir.
I would suspect that after we go through these, then we'll talk about if commissioners have other projects they want to look at. Wrap it up and move ahead. All right. So I've got a list, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 fire departments have asked for increases. So I know that Mike and I don't know how many Mike and I went to. We went 6 of them. Okay. Chief, how many do we have fire departments total?
7 fire districts.
No, I mean, how many fire districts are there total? 29. So out of the 29, 7 have asked for increases. Okay, let me read those out for the public. Atwell Township, they're currently at 7 3/4 cents. That'd be 0.0775. They're asking for a 2-cent increase. That would be 9.75. Boston Heights is currently at 8 and let's see, 0.0845, which is 8 cents and 45 1/100ths. And they're asking to go to 9, so that's a little more than a 1/2 cent increase. Franklin is at 0.0716, asking to go to 9. Locke is at 9, asking to go to 9.75. Miller's Ferry is at 0.08 or 8 cents, asking to go to 8.75, 3/4 cent increase. South Rowan is at 8.55 cents, asking to go to 9. It's 45 points higher. West Rowan is at 7 and asking to go to 9. That's all 7. So we won't vote on these now, but we'll open the floor to commissioners for discussion. And then after this, we'll simply move on to other items that we want to address as individual commissioners. And then we will put forward the budget in several different pieces to vote on, on individual pieces. So that's right. We'll have a public hearing after we talk about all that. All right, discussion.
I'll start. As you said, we went to, I think, 6 of them. Majority of all the funds that are being requested are for personnel. Just not able to get the volunteers to come out. Still have to go, so a lot of times other departments have to cover. They have to cover other departments. I think they all realize that society's changed. It's hard to get people to come out and volunteer nowadays. It's hard to get people to do anything really. And so I'm comfortable with it because most of it, like I said, most of all this is for personnel for coverage. I think citizens we really didn't have any citizens come out and speak against any of it, the ones we were at. And I think citizens realize if they don't have the time or the ability to volunteer, they still need the service and they don't mind paying a little bit more to get that coverage. It's I know many of the folks that from some of the departments, they really have a great service heart for the community. A lot of them have full-time jobs and a lot of them have done this for years, and really they're at the point where they should be turning it over to younger people to take over, and those folks hadn't showed up for them. And so I think who knows what's going to happen long-term down the road with the whole setup for this county. 10, 15 years, we're going to be sitting here talking about different a different process. But I think right now, those guys need that. And it's just to maintain what they're doing. It's not to build new buildings. I don't think any of them are building new buildings. I think it's all just mostly for personnel. And some of it is, I mean, there's a little bit for air packs and things like that. It's got very expensive. They take, the volunteers are held to the same standards that full-time departments are. So they have to go through the same things. You know, we saw where you may have good ropes that you and I would use, but they got thrown away because they've had them for a certain amount of time. Their tires have to be changed. And so fortunately, no one wants to raise taxes, but I think these are, in my opinion, these are warranted, and these guys are going to use it the right way.
Yeah, Mike and I went to 6 of the 7, and I'll echo what Mike said. You know, culture is changing. Many of you in here may be members of civic organizations. And sadly, if you look around the room in civic clubs, there's not a whole lot of 22-year-olds there anymore. We're losing such a wonderful part of community and what America did. I remember growing up, my dad being part of civic groups and us going to annual events, and they were just so big and so exciting, and we look forward to them, and we seem to be losing that. And part of the volunteer base that we're losing is in our volunteer fire departments. As Mike and I went out there, I was just struck by the quality of men and women that sit in that room, and to be faced with them and understand what they do with very little and what they do for this community. A lot of these fire departments have worked very hard to get their protection class lowered, and that ends up being a net result of large decreases in homeowners' insurance rates. Jim and I aren't real excited about that, are we, Jim? But we're kidding about that. But many of these departments, it's still a net decrease for them. They've provided better quality fire protection for the homeowners and business owners in those communities. The homeowners and business owners see a large decrease in insurance rates. And so the fire departments are saying, hey, as part of that benefit, we've got to, there's 2 things driving this, and Mike identified both of them, and it's the volunteers we don't have anymore, so they're having to pay folks to be there. And secondly, you know, the regulations of the equipment that these guys have to have. Mike mentioned tires. You may have perfectly good tires on a truck, but they still have to be replaced. And in my mind, that's just lobbying going on from a lot of these suppliers, right? Mike mentioned ropes and tanks and all kind of things. They may be perfectly good still, but regulations are in place now where they're required to replace them, and none of them are cheap. So I'm with Mike, man. We hate to see any of these tax rates go up, but in the end, many of these folks have seen insurance rates go down. So in order for them to have a tax increase, they're required, I'll say by law, that's I think what the requirement is, whether by statute or law, they have to advertise and have public meetings at their, I don't know if it has to be at your fire department, but they have to hold public meetings. And they let folks know, we're going to talk about your tax rate in your fire district. And we're going to do it on this night. And Mike and I went to 6 of those 7, and no one showed up to speak against it. And so we understand people are busy, but we didn't see any real organized effort against that. So And there's a lot of things changing as well. I know that Miller's Ferry and also China Grove, and there's others. So I don't have them all memorized, so I don't mean to offend any of the chiefs or the fire folks, but there's a lot more that's being placed on our folks today than there were also. If you're a fire department along the 85 corridor, you are called out, I won't say almost every night, but if you told me it was every night, I wouldn't be surprised. There's accidents along 85 all the time. And so those folks are taxed with responding to those. We've read in the newspapers of people being killed in horrific car accidents in the last 6 months. In fact, we had one of our fire departments who lost, how many of your vehicles? 2, 3 of them in a horrific crash that totaled 3 of their vehicles, and luckily none of their personnel were hurt. But that stuff costs money. And so, as usual, I talk too much. I'm just trying to simplify it for the general public as to why we're thinking the way we think. And so on my behalf, I'll support these.
Mr. Chairman, I too will support it. And one other thing that I think we all need to think about is the fact that our county, as I put it, is exploding with development and housing developments that are coming, and that's just going to put more pressure on our volunteer departments.
I have always supported the volunteer fire department. It gets harder to do because there's just not as many volunteers today. And I understand that. But it is 9% is a healthy amount until you start looking at the budgets. And then I just looked over here and saw it. There's at least 10 of the volunteer fire departments that run on a budget less than $300,000 a year. So we're not, a couple of these volunteer fire departments are big budget fire departments. And they're 800,000. I think I saw one at 800,000, and a couple of them have pretty big budgets. So we are talking about a lot of money for some of them, but a lot of these volunteer fire agencies are shoestrings. They're running on a small budget. By the time Aaron estimated an increase of maybe 100% this year in fuel. What are these volunteer fire departments going to do if he's right? Because I don't care how much you cut it, those trucks only run on diesel. And so between diesel and gasoline vehicles, may have a tough time this year. I wish I knew the answer to this problem. I don't want to see us go to full-time employees in the fire department because it's going to be so expensive that the general public will not understand it. And they're going to be raising sand at the fire chiefs, which is not fair. So I'm going to reluctantly support them all because I don't have a better answer this year.
All right. Close the conversation on that, and let's just move now. Unless there's anything else we want to talk about, there's a kind of part in here where if there's any projects that commissioners have not included in the budget, then now's the time that we would get Jim to take some notes. So, yep.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to add a full-time equivalent person in the health department to the port team for peer counseling.
Okay, and that possibly could.
ARP.
ARP.
Yeah, because it would fall under mental health and the total would be 52,000.
Yeah, I think it would certainly, it would be okay to offset the expense with revenue for ARP, and it most likely will be approved if it's related to mental health. As it's been explained to me with some of the school money, if it's mental health, it can be related to COVID-19.
Okay.
I got three things here. First thing, I'm not sure, last manager. So several years I keep bringing up the Crime Stoppers, $2,500. It's supposed to be in the budget.
It's in there.
Is it? Okay,
Yep,
good.
1,500.
Oh, 1,500, okay.
It's 15, right?
500.
Right there.
You want 15 or 25?
Well, I think it has gone up. I think last time they told me it was 1,800, but if we want to do 2,000, that's okay.
It's in there at 15 right now. 2,000?
Then the second thing I wanted to bring up, we had this was cut out of the budget last year, but we had put in a half-time position for veteran services, part-time person. It's not a full-time position. And that he was going to come back and talk to us, and then before we actually implemented it, and then COVID came and Aaron started cutting, and so they eliminated that position. But I'd like to add back that half position. I think it's Secretary 2 position, and I think it's half that salary is $11,986, somewhere in there.
11 what?
11,800. So I guess 12,000. Because I think they would only, as a part-time, can only work 19 hours a week.
Is it okay if we make it 16 for taxes and all?
Sure, whatever.
Okay.
Yeah, whatever at halftime. I was just looking at the little list.
What is the name of the position, Mike?
I think it's Secretary 2. I might have been looking at it on the chart.
And what is it? What is it for?
Veteran Services.
Veteran Services.
Yeah, they have, so he's got the receptionist fully trained now to do claims. So she can do the claims sometimes now, and they bring in the half position, and they can switch off, and she can, or he, whoever they hire, can run the front window for them while they do that. The third thing that I have is this was originally in the budget requested, but it wasn't put in the manager's budget. Oh, you can't hear? So originally requested, Sheriff had requested 4 positions for a warrant squad, which would be 2 master deputies and 2 deputy positions. But these folks, some of the numbers he put in here, they specifically would go out and look for people with warrants or pick up the folks with warrants. 2019, the deputies served 6,628 warrants. 2000, it was down, or 2020, sorry, it was down about 5,059. But they did, a lot of warrants statewide were actually not picked up. A lot of warrants, like if you miss court and those sort of things, the judicial system in the state said, depending on the counties, but for the most part, they said don't pick those folks up because we're not having court. So that's the reason I think that they were down last year. And that does include civil, does some of those warrants. But one of the main things it would help with was keeping the deputies in the response areas, help response times. For instance, where I live in Enidville, if the deputy assigned to that area has to take someone to jail for a warrant, they'll have to pick them up, take them their leave, drive up to Salisbury, spend the time seeing the magistrate, going through the process. They may be gone a couple hours because of the distance. If they have a warrant squad, then the warrant squad can come down and get that person. And they can stay and do their calls for service in the area, which would help with response times. Because when they're out, then someone from the other area has to come over and cover. This would also help when detectives go out and take out warrants on different folks or different criminals, I guess. And they can go out and look for those for them, try to get them arrested quicker. So the total cost of this 4 positions, because they're 2 master deputies and 2 regular deputies or new deputies, they wanted a combination of experience in this group. It's $505,658. But what we'd like to do is start it January 1st, which would cut the salaries in half. They'd still have the same initial costs for equipment. So the calculations I did was about $367,000, about $368,000 for the first year. But every year after that, it would just be salaries, which would be about $275 years going forward after that. Questions that I might be able to answer?
Commissioner Caskey,
Yes.
just for clarification, we don't have a secretary to position, but I think they might be looking for office assistant too,
Okay.
part-time. Does that sound?
Actually, that's what I wrote down, so I said the wrong thing. Yes, I wrote down office assistant. Sorry.
Okay.
That's all I had. That's all.
Michael, why are these deputies needed again? And were these, I might not have heard everything you said, were these presented in the regular budget?
These were in the original budget. They weren't. Aaron did put them in part of the budget that he presented. So like these are folks that their main goal will be go out and get warrants, people with warrants. So even if you have someone say turns himself in on a warrant, that officer has to leave and go. In that area has to go up and do the time it takes to process that person. So it takes them away from actually going out and doing calls for service or being proactive. So their main job will be go out to get people with warrants, either going to where they think they are and getting them, or if they arrest people, if a deputy would arrest a person on a call for service, then the warrants squad could come and get those person and take them and process them for them so the deputy can stay in his response area to continue working. Another thing that I mentioned was, when the detectives get probable cause and go get warrants on someone, then they can send the squad out to look for them because it may be some, a case they have and they know this person lives over here and they can go over and get them quicker instead of, the time it may take to go process them. That would be their main purpose, but, as always, having, we are a growing population here and crime's picking up, so having more officers out there, things happen is also helpful, but their main purpose is going to be for the warrants.
Did we hear you right that Rowan County served 66,000 warrants?
Yeah, 6,600.
Okay. Say we got other issues. So that's 550 a month.
Yeah, and like I said, some of those are they're not all the patrol deputies that are doing those. Some of them are the civil guys and some other folks, but this would mostly be to help with the patrol positions. Try to keep those guys in the area longer.
Do we have any statistics as far as problems or calls coming in while a deputy is bringing in someone on a warrant?
I don't think they would be, I mean, you don't know when you're getting a warrant, you don't know what call's coming in, so I don't know.
No, I understand that. I understand that. I'm just saying that historically, is there any information there that says, okay, well, this deputy was bringing in someone on a warrant and they were at the magistrate's office, this call came in from their area and this call came in from their area?
I don't know if that's tracked. I don't think it's something that's probably been tracked because if you're, I use Anyville for example because it's so far from here, but if they're gone, they're gonna have to pull the one from the area beside them, so they don't. I don't know that they have that saying that he was gone because of a warrant, because he could also be gone for some other reason, had to arrest somebody. But the reason that the warrants are is because there's not a lot of, you don't testify with the warrant generally. And so that's something somebody could come pick up and take for them. It doesn't have to be that deputy. If the deputy arrests somebody on scene for things the deputy saw or the deputy has found cause to arrest them for, they need to go testify to that. But if it's just a warrant, then they can have another deputy come and take that person. And I think, like I said, I think the reason that they want master deputies, 2 master deputies in there also is because sometimes the warrants may be violent crime type warrants, those sort of things. It's not, there's a lot of OFAs, like they miss court for whatever, speeding ticket, probably not that, but something minor. And
For me, it would be really helpful if that was started to be tracked. Because I think a lot of our programs are based on data. And so I don't know if that's something that you could talk to the sheriff about and arrange.
I can ask him if that's something they can track. Like I said, they'll figure out how to.
Maybe 911 can help.
Well, yeah, I mean, if there's probably ways to track some of that. I don't know, get specific if it's just for a warrant, maybe. Probably some things that can be tracked. Plus, ideally, the call times, calls for service times, how long it takes to answer a call would probably go down too, which is one of the main reasons. Keep someone in the area and they can get to the next call quicker. I know, well, to be honest, I mean, it's just, you have certain kind of calls you try to get to, and they try to, if it's a priority 1 or priority 3, that sort of thing. But overall, people are calling 911 more and more, same reason, the fire departments are having the same thing for law enforcement. And there's not as many law enforcement out there as there per population as there used to be. And so, so sometimes it's taking longer to get up to the call just because of the volume that we have to deal with. But I will talk to them and see if there's some tracking and things that information we can get.
It would also be helpful to have those statistics as far as population growth versus additional deputies that were added over the years. So we can start to understand what our needs are going to be.
Yeah, you made some good points about the population growth that's probably coming here. And are there areas, because you may need to start looking at shrinking the areas, response areas, add more response areas as areas get more populated.
They do track, they do come out for speeding tickets. Because they arrested or came to my daughter's house at 11 o'clock at night and made her go downtown. She's the criminal in the family now.
Oh, huh.
Because her attorney in South Carolina didn't take care of a speeding ticket for her.
So Mike, as I understand it, there's about 550 warrants served a month, which comes out to about 18 a day. And what this squad would do basically take the burden of serving warrants, take them off of those folks and allow them to remain on the street to keep folks safe. And isn't that it in a nutshell?
That's, yeah. That's probably the major part of it, yes.
Right, anything else? Go ahead.
If I could add, I'm not seeing my request. Is it in there? Health Department, Port.
On the ARP.
Yeah. I saw the other ARPs there, so that's why I was curious.
$52. Jim, anything from you? Greg?
I'm good.
The only thing that I want to bring up, it was something that was brought up last year, and I've spoken to the commissioners about it. Now, in my mind, made even possibly more relevant for Rowan County as the federal government continues its spending patterns. I'll just put it that way. We may be looking at $1 trillion infrastructure bill. There's certainly a lot that Rowan County could benefit from in a federal infrastructure bill. And so I would like us to consider putting out an RFQ again, not again, but I'd like us to again consider putting out an RFQ for a lobbying firm for Rowan County. I'm not, I know we talked about one last year. I'm not tied to that group. I just, as we continue to see communities around us make announcements of big federal grants for industrial parks and new runways and infrastructure projects. I'm thankful that Rowan County is doing well, and we have a lot to show for ourselves in the last several years. But this is going to be an opportunity that's coming up. I think we're fairly certain of that. And having folks who can help us on the federal level, I think would be of significance for us. I just don't want us to lose an opportunity here in the near future. So the folks we were talking to initially had given us an idea of about $5,000 a month. So that'd be $6,000 a year. So my ask would be that we go out for an RFQ not to exceed $5,000 a month, and then we'll see what that does. I don't know what the cost actually is other than what we were told last year. Anything else? All right. till Julie gets back. So need to, we're going to have, we do need to have a public hearing. I don't know if there's anyone here that wants to speak regarding the upcoming budget, but we will, Yep. Okay. Yeah, so we'll go ahead and open the floor for public comment. We'll have our public hearing now. So if anyone would like to speak, then please come forward.
Good evening. I'm Cindy Fink at 105 Yorkshire Drive in Salisbury, and I'm the Executive Director of Meals on Wheels Rowan. I'd like to thank you for the allocation from the commissioners and through the county for funding last year for meals. And I'd just like to give you a little idea of what happened last year for us. During the pandemic, we identified a food insecurity issue and a gap in senior nutrition services. We began shopping for and delivering groceries to seniors, as well as collaborating with Rowan Helping Ministries to deliver their USDA food boxes to individuals who couldn't get to their Longstreet location to pick up their food. In combination with our home delivered meals program, we provided 107,170 meals, which is 50,000 more meals in 1 year than ever in our history. So I think you can see that we were definitely trying to do everything we could to support seniors in Rowan County during the pandemic. We were able to do this through 14 new grantors that gave us some COVID funding. That funding not to be repeated, unfortunately. We also were able to begin using the same vendor as Ruffey Homes. I know Commissioner Pierce, you've asked and looked for collaboration, and going forward in 2021-22, we'll continue to be using the same vendor. And I believe it helped them tremendously, a little bit more than it helped us, but in general, it was a good collaboration. During 2020, we also found that depression and social isolation climbed dramatically among our seniors. We began a Charlie pilot project. Charlie is a tablet. You may have seen the article that Ben did in the paper for us, and it uses a touch screen for seniors to communicate and engage them every day. Thus far, we have 18 Charlies out there, and we're ready to put 25 more as we move forward this year. At our goal of serving home delivered meals to 300 individuals daily, we will raise $838,500 to provide these meals. The Home Care Block Grant, which I'm sure you all are familiar with, will fund 26 of our participants at about $61,000. So that leaves us $777,500 to raise. I know that your budget has a recommended amount of $69K, which we appreciate. But in view of our results last year and our efforts to continue to fill the senior nutrition gap, we would like to ask you to add approximately $12,000 to the allocation to bring it to $83,500, or 10% of the cost of home delivered meals in the coming year. We are very grateful for your participation. Some of you delivered meals with us this year during March for Meals. We really appreciate your involvement. Our president, Tom Robinson, sends his regrets as he is out of state today, but we appreciate everything you've done and look forward to working with you again in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Ms. Fink, could you tell me this Charlie program, what does one of those computers cost?
The tablet itself runs about $250 to $300. We have it delivered directly to the participant, especially during COVID, without any contact. And then there is a service fee monthly, and that depends on whether or not it's a Wi-Fi enabled tablet or a cellular. I follow with interest your efforts at putting Wi-Fi accessibility throughout the county, because that is going to mean a lot to our seniors. It does cost us $50 a month for a cellular enabled tablet.
What's your Wi-Fi cost?
30.
Okay. And who decides who gets these devices?
Our care coordinators work with our participants to see who needs it in terms of they need connectivity because they don't have family nearby, or they were very outgoing and personable, but that COVID really impacted them a lot. We have found that our tablets are not used best with people who are technologically adept because it's a touch screen. It moves a little slower than a computer or your smartphone might. And we have also found it's not great for those who have advanced dementia because they can't remember to touch the screen.
County Manager Church, would you follow up on that and see if it's possible that this ARP money could be used for that?
Yeah, yes, sir.
If you do that, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
How many?
We with the Cannon Foundation, we received a grant to put out 25 more tablets. So our ultimate goal would be able to have at least a third of our folks covered or have 100 tablets out there.
Thank you.
All right, anyone else? All right, if not, then we'll close the public hearing. So, we have 7 funds that we'll need to motion, second, and vote on. The first fund is the general fund. Is that the one, Mr. Manager, that will carry the changes that we just spoke about?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Can we just refer to, is this sheet titled, Randy?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to add the $12,000 that was requested by Ms. Fink for the Meals on Wheels.
Okay. Randy, would you? All right, commissioners, are you ready to move ahead?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve Fund 101 General Fund as presented with the changes that you see in front of us?
So moved. Second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We have a motion to approve Fund 201 Fire District Fund. I'll need to specifically refer to these on all of the fire districts that we have, which is, the number is how many? 21?
None.
29. You just added 8 of them since we've been here. 29. So all of them will stay the same with the exception of Atwell Township will move to 9 3/4 cents, Boston Heights 9 cents, Franklin 9 cents, Locke 9 3/4 cents, Miller Ferry 8 3/4, South Rowan 9 cents, West Rowan County 9 cents. The others will remain the same. So do we have a motion to approve those for Fund 201 Fire District Fund?
So moved.
All All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. Do we have a motion to approve Fund 202 Emergency Telephone System Fund?
So moved.
Motion?
Second.
All right, second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We have a motion to approve Fund 501 Risk Management Fund.
So moved.
All right, Judy, motion, Jim, second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We have a motion to approve Fund 601 Landfill Fund.
So moved.
Judy, motion.
Second.
Craig, second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We have a motion to approve Fund 603, the Airport Fund.
So moved. Second.
Judy,
Jim.
motion, Craig, second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We have a motion to approve Fund 605, Water Fund.
So moved. Second.
Judy and Craig, motion is second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And Mr. Financial Guy, is that it?
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you too, Jim.
I want to, I want to say one thing about this year's budget, because there's a lot of confusion in this year's budget, and it's understandable. It's confusing to us. As we went through the manager's expansion highlights and his PowerPoint, I want the general public to understand that one thing that Aaron told us is that we have over $100 million coming into the coming into the county from the federal government. And each of those has different rules. The county is receiving about $27 million. And those have rules that what we can spend those dollars on. All of it's COVID related, but there are some that are outside of that. For instance, one thing we've talked about tonight is water, sewer, stormwater. When you get into the municipalities have different rules. Certainly when you get into the school system and Rowan Cabarrus Community College, they have rules that are completely different from ours. So what we are trying to do as a county and other organizations like Rowan Cabarrus, Rowan Salisbury School System, municipalities, we're trying to figure out those things that we can benefit the school system with, where we can spend our dollars where they cannot. So there's just a lot of confusion in this year's budget, probably for the general public. And it'll work itself out over the year. I did want to make sure that we highlighted some things though. Last year, as the manager said, there was no cost of living adjustment for the county employees. This year, there will be a 2%. Of our budget expansion, that's $1.1 million. And also for our full-time folks that work for the county, and I know there's a better definition for that, but our county workers didn't get time off during COVID, right? I mean, our folks still worked. They were considered essential workers, and so no one was, folks weren't getting time off, and so through these ARP dollars, we're giving each of those folks a $2,000, we call it premium pay. And that's gonna, I can't remember what that number was, but it's about $2 million, I think. And then these last two things, the longevity and merit, and then the 1/3 pay study. We've been doing these pay studies. 1/3 of our departments get a pay study every year, and then we increase their pay based on that pay study. But a couple years ago, we started this longevity and merit pay that will eventually replace the pay study. Pay study increase this year is about 800,000, and the longevity and merit pay is about 525,000. So in total, just in county employee benefits, there's an increase of about $4.5 million. And so part of that is going to come out of COVID money. And so when we look at the big increase that we have this year over last year's budget, last year was an anomaly. And so we spent way below our means last year. This year, we have all of this COVID ARP money running through our budget, and it's jacking up what our budget looks like. So I just want to remind folks that I think we're a ½ cent lower on our taxes than we were in 2015, 2014. We've not gone up any, we've gone down. But the good news is this community is, we are prospering, and we are bringing in significant amounts of new revenue, mostly because of what is happening on the economic development side and what Rod Kreider and his folks are doing. This community is growing, and it's bringing a lot of opportunity, and we're creating more revenue with a lower tax rate than what we had when all of us came in. So that's a really good thing. I just want to point that out. So while this is a big increase, the good news is it's with lower taxes than we had, lower tax rate than we had, and the community is really doing well from a financial standpoint. And so we're going to invest in some things, some education. We're going to invest in our airport. We're going to invest in mental health. We're going to invest in schools and continue to move ahead. So, and we still have more to do here. Item number 9.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Matt, are you still with us?
His cell phone probably died.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I was just now able to unmute. I'm still here.
Is he there?
Yeah, but before we move forward, I just want to clarify one thing. That discussion of the school from 4 million to 1 million, that stayed at 4 million. Is that correct?
No, we moved it to $1 million
Just
for this year.
so 1 million for this year. So that's going to, Jay, how would they go back and amend because it was as presented, that was on a different spreadsheet. The spreadsheet, we had 2 spreadsheets up, and the one when you voted to approve the budget as amended, it had the spreadsheet with the changes, which did not have that change on it. So Jay, would we just put that spreadsheet back up, add that change, and then
Voted on that motion?
that change was not in there. It was on a different spreadsheet I was talking about. But would the board consider just if Randy pulls that back up and we
Let's move to amend the motion to reflect the actual final exhibit.
Randy, if you'll do that, we'll move on to item 9 and come back to it.
Okay.
And it reminds us that money is ARP money, and it's still available, but at Mike Caskey's urging, and I think all of us agree that we'd like to, we'll also vote on reinstating that capital improvement committee, and begin to work with the schools on that. All right, let's go on to item number 9 then. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So item number 9, I think we've all talked about this, if not individually. I know in work sessions, this has been going on a long, long time. Matt is on the phone. Doug could not be with us tonight, but basically this is a task order for $8,000 for McGill to finish and alter some of the work, and they may do some design. And if you will pull up the agenda item with the map. April. Thank you very much. So I'm going to try to explain it in 1 minute, and then if you have questions or if I say something wrong, Matt, just correct me. The way I understand it, the way we're going to go out for bid on this is we're going to do half the road and half the water line and as one bid, and then half, and then another bid would be the full road and the full water line. And Matt, where does the sewer line come in? Is that in both bid 1 and 2, or is that a bid number 3?
The sewer line would all have to be bid as part of the project, because it has to run all the way from the sewer down at the bottom along the creek up to where the new animal shelter is. And it would be bid along with the base bid. Okay,
so the base bid would include the sewer, and then there would be a bid for the water and the road going to where the red mark is on the road, and then a bid number 2, which would take the road and the water all the way down, but the sewer is going to be going all the way down regardless. So this will allow us to go out to bid. When the process come back, we'll bring it before the board, and y'all can decide if you want to do half a road, half a water line, or a full road, full water line. And this will enable, we fulfill a verbal, I guess, verbal suggestions or discussions made with Shelter Guardians before the Capitol freeze in COVID. I also believe that ARP money can likely pay for the water and sewer line. Road we're not so sure about, but with that, that's all I have. And Matt, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, I think that's about it. I mean, all the permits for this, to my knowledge, have been obtained, except maybe for the city water and sewer permits. But other than that, all the permits should be ready to go.
And where that red line is for the alternate, is that going to take the water line far down enough to connect to the existing animal shelter? Because that's one of the reasons we're extending it, is because their well's going out.
Yes, so Matt, Commissioner Pierce is asking if where the red line is enables what will be the public water line. Will it be in a place to where a tap can be connected and ran to the old animal shelter?
That's one of the updates that we'll need to look at finalizing the bid documents. But we will want to run that far enough so that tap can be made.
And is there any way that one tap can be used for both? I mean, if it's one facility, I mean, as one facility?
No, they got to be metered separate.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure how the metering is set up out there.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Glad you got to sit through a budget meeting.
Hey, no problem.
All right, so we need a motion to approve task order 15. That it?
Yes, sir.
That simple. Okay.
And if you want to go ahead with that and authorize us to go out to bid, we won't have to come back to the board. So you approve the task order and authorize the manager to go out for bid for the project. The next time you'll hear about this will be when we've got dollar signs.
Could we just do the task order and then have a special called meeting?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
We Zoom it.
You want to make a motion to approve task order and, what, I don't know, what did you?
Authorize.
For 15 and authorized to go up to bid.
Yeah.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All right, all in favor, say
Aye.
All right.
Approve anything.
Carolyn, this won't be a hard sell. The next item is discussion regarding the May meeting schedule. Typically in the past, we vote to cancel the second meeting because cancel a second monthly meeting during the month of July. This year, July 4th falls on a Sunday and county office will be closed on Monday, July 5th. In observance of Independence Day, the board is currently scheduled to meet on Tuesday, July 5th. That's not good. Oh, okay, July 6th. Yeah. You want to cancel the first one and work on the second one?
Yeah.
We have a motion to cancel the first meeting and work on the second.
So move.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right, Caleb Sinclair. All right. Our litter report during the 2-week period beginning Monday, May 3rd through Friday, May 14th. Department of Environmental Management removed 8,440 pounds of litter and debris from Rowan County roadsides. We appreciate the work that Caleb and his group are doing. We appreciate harder work from our citizens. I tell you, I was driving down the road the other day behind a dump truck, behind a garbage truck. Man, stuff was just flying out everywhere. I don't know why I should be shocked, but I was shocked. Got a picture of it with the tag number and plan on calling the company to say, hey, listen.
Mr. Chairman, can Randy present that in the?
Yeah. The next item is budget amendments. Do we have a motion to approve budget amendments?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, we'll save board appointments for last because those are our favorites. So Randy, go ahead.
So what this does is reduces the 4 million to 3, and it also reduces the revenue. And if the board would just acknowledge that this is the attachment that.
All right, so we will amend our earlier vote on, I think it was General Fund 101.
Yes, sir.
Right? To include the newly updated amendments, changes. So do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Craig motion, Jim second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, let's move to board appointments. On the Agriculture Advisory Board, all right, we had appointed Suzanne Ramsey for a 1-year term, but because of some changes to stagger these terms on that board, we're asked to make her term a 3-year term instead. Do we have a motion to do that? Motion is second. Jim and Judy, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Atwell Township Volunteer Fire Department Commissioners Kenneth Cole applied to fill a seat that'll become vacant on June 30th. And Jeff Moore and Kathy Blaylock applied for a reappointment to 2-year terms. Motion to accept those 3.
So moved.
All right, all in favor, say aye. Central Iowa Workforce Development Board, Corey Hill had submitted a request for reappointment. Motion to appoint him. In a second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Historic land, we need to chat about this one. We're going to remove the Historic Landmarks Commission item tonight. There's some information that came from Shane Stewart about residency requirements, so we're just going to pass over that if that's okay. All right. City of Kannapolis Planning ETJ Robert Siebert has been nominated to fill an ETJ seat. Motion to approve him.
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Nursing Home Advisory Committee, Sylvia Foster has applied for reappointment. She has, let's see, she has served her limits already, but we can waive those. We have a motion to waive the term limit.
So moved.
Craig motion, Judy second. And then do we have a motion to accept Sylvia Focia?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Rockwell Rural Fire Department, Volunteer Fire Department Commissioners, David Dunn has submitted an application. Motion to approve him.
So moved.
All in favor, say aye. Rowan Transit System Advisory Committee, there are 4 at-large vacancies, and we have 3 applications: Jonathan Barbie, Caroline Johnson, and Anna Short. They've applied. The term expiration dates vary, so I'll just take them in order and make, unless someone wants to do something different, we need to make an appointment for a 1-year term and 2 seats.
I like
Huh?
Jonathan Barbie get a 2-year term.
All right, so the term seat expires. So there's a 1-year, and then are there 2-year, or is it a 3-year? What did it say in 2023? So it'd be a 2-year. So we've got Jonathan Barbie nominated for a 2-year. Do we have someone else nominated for a 2-year? Want to go with Caroline Johnson? Okay, I don't know any of these folks. So I know, I'm sorry, I do know Jonathan. So Jonathan and Caroline to a 2-year term, and Anna for a 1-year. Do we have that motion in a second? So moved. All right, then lastly, Cecil Whitley Douglas Poole.
I think we need to vote on that.
Is that
before we move
2
on.
people? Is that just a long name? Cecil Whitley. Okay, I think it's Cecil Whitley, Douglas Poole, and Tony Waller applied for reappointment for a 2-year term. So motion to approve those 3. Is that 3? Okay, we're just missing a comment. I thought, man, that guy's got a long name. All right, we have a second? Second. All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Need to go back and do a total vote on the last one. I believe. Did we officially vote? All right.
Yeah.
On the Rowan transit system?
On,
The system.
yeah, the transit system, yeah.
Oh, okay. I really am out of it. Sorry.
Anyone else want to talk about anything? Is that a motion? We have a motion to adjourn? Yes. All in favor, say aye. Aye.